Two police officers, wearing blue uniforms, arrived at my garage in a patrol car. I secretly observed them from my spot beneath the lift. It was strange to see police officers so happy, but their expressions turned serious as they got closer. They confirmed my identity and shared unfortunate news about my wife. Something happened at our house, and she was in the hospital, but they couldn't provide details. Trying to leave immediately, they intercepted me, seeking explanations. They inquired about my whereabouts for the last 3 hours. I assured them that I had been there all day and suggested asking my 2 mechanics for confirmation. Apologetically, I mentioned that I had sneaked out for 10 minutes around 11 o'clock a.m. to get coffee for all of us. While one of the policemen chatted with Mike and Pete, another took note of the coffee shop I had visited. He then asked if I could show him my car. Without hesitation, I agreed, stating that my truck was outside. I led him to my truck, and he thoroughly inspected it before granting me permission to go to the hospital. I had a concerned look as a hospital staff member explained Kate's injuries, the blood transfusion, and the ongoing surgery. I thought it was unprofessional for the doctor to half smile during our conversation. Leaving the hospital, the same 2 policemen intercepted me for more answers. We went to the hospital cafeteria for much-needed coffee. They inquired about my relationship with my wife. I explained that we met and got married relatively late 8 years ago. Kate successfully worked as an attorney, wanting children but waiting until almost 40 to establish herself in her job. They asked why she was home on a weekday. I explained Kate quit her job a month ago to rest before pregnancy, a kind of vacation before at least 10 years of domestic service. I concluded by expressing my love for my wife, stating that we are doing well and looking forward to having a baby. They asked about John Barton. I denied knowing him, and they walked away without answering. Trusting my team to lock the garage, I went straight home. 2 forensic scientists and a detective were searching the house. The detective introduced himself, explained what he knew, and posed the same questions as the previous officers, along with a new one. He inquired about the presence of a few drops of blood in the downstairs toilet. I responded, expressing my lack of knowledge. I then questioned the detective about the focus on me as a suspect and sought assurance that they were actively investigating other possibilities. He reassured me, stating that they had several leads and mentioned his colleague talking to Mrs. Barton. Curious about John Barton? I asked. Apologetically, the detective stated that it was inappropriate for him to comment. They walked away, leaving me in a state of confusion. I went upstairs to the master bedroom and observed the unfolding scene, realizing I would be truly shocked if I were watching it for the first time. Earlier in the day, around 10 a.m. at work, I started thinking about closeness. There's nothing unusual about this. They say guys think about closeness an average of 67 times per waking hour, and men virtually cut off from their wives for a month can double that. Since Kate left work, our 2 to 3 times a week has dropped to almost 0. Kate was either in a bad mood, bored and depressed, or too tired. Personally, I thought it was because her normal life was ending, and she was scared. Being a caring husband, I didn't want to pressure her. She'll come out of her fear at her own pace. I knew my life would change after having children, but I understood hers would be turned upside down. I kept daydreaming about our early years of marriage, where our bed life was anywhere, anytime. In any case, we made an effort to keep it fresh and new as long as our imaginations existed, and then slowly fell into the automatic mode that long-term partners often do. I snapped out of my daze, realizing I needed to act. Restore spontaneity. Head home now and be close with Kate until you're completely spent. Decision made. It's time to leave and go home. I informed Mick and Pete that I'd be away for a while. Pete asked if I could test drive the car he just serviced. Returning home, disappointment struck as I saw an unfamiliar car in the driveway. My friend's visit ruined my plans. Nevertheless, I decided to go in. Maybe my friend could be convinced to leave and salvage my plans. Without suspicion, I opened the front door and my hair stood on end. I knew my marriage was over. The unmistakable sounds of joyous affinity reverberated down the stairs. It was almost automatic for me to record a video whenever a client brought their car to the garage, a precaution against accusations of damage. Heart pounding, I ran up the steps, camera ready, and peeked through the bedroom door. Yes, it was Kate. And yes, it was some guy I didn't recognize, happily on our bed. Suppressing the urge to react violently, I turned away. I can honestly say this was the most challenging thing I've ever done. My legs gave way, and I collapsed outside the door, completely devastated. Dimly aware that they were reaching their peaks nearby, I couldn't tell how long I stayed there. Gradually, it dawned on me that all sounds of their betrayal had stopped, replaced only by conversations. It was just as bad, and still tore me to the core. Realizing I needed to think, I knew I had to get out of earshot. Reacting emotionally would at least land him in the hospital and me in prison. Quietly getting up, tiptoeing downstairs, I slumped on the sofa, away from the sights, smells, and most sounds of betrayal. Free from emotional distractions, I did what I knew best and devised a plan. Get him out of sight, confront him, throw him out the back door undressed, and repeat the process with her. Without bruises and witnesses, I hoped to avoid a trial. Fortunately, I had the perfect shock weapon in my workshop. 2 years ago, in the Army Reserve National Guard, my skills earned me the task of clearing trucks, where I found a small device that would now come in handy. Police call them stun grenades. Slightly larger than a regular grenade, they're a small canister with a lever pin ignition mechanism, specifically made for hostage rescue. While designed to cause minimal physical damage, the explosion is accompanied by a flash with a power of 8 million candles and a shock sound of 170 decibels. The flash alone can stun a person for at least 5 seconds. Fueled by my newfound hatred, my mind quickly formed the rest of the plan. To avoid damaging my house, I couldn't just throw a grenade on the floor. I took out the device, quickly glued a short piece of rope to it, and put a loop on the end of the rope. Prepared in this way, I tiptoed upstairs, realizing secrecy was no longer necessary. Clearly hearing men's moans from behind the bedroom door, I paused only to pick up my phone from the floor outside the door where I had dropped it and glanced around the door frame. It was evident that the second round of affinity was in full swing. My wife was satisfying her lover, caressing him below the waist. Mentally rehearsing the sequence of events I had decided on, I took a deep breath and took action. Stepping into the room, I looped the end of the rope around the hook on the bottom of the light fixture, leaving the device hanging halfway to the floor. I pulled out the pin, put it in my pocket, and walked out the door, pressing my fingers tightly to my ears and closing my eyes. Even with my precautions, the effect was amazing. I clearly felt the shockwave and the bright reflected light through my eyelids. Following the plan, I jumped into the room again, ready for action. This time, it was my turn to be surprised. I don't know exactly what I expected to see, but it was nothing like the scene that appeared before me. Mr. Anonymous lay on his back in bed, and there was clear damage below his waist. Either nature had been cruel, or something crucial was missing. Kate lay on the floor, her eyes empty, mouth moving like a fish out of water. Confused, I retreated to the hall to ponder. My thoughts were abruptly halted by 2 horrifying screams from the bedroom, followed by loud bangs and slamming doors. It dawned on me that I was in serious trouble. My plan had failed once again. Peeking into the chaotic scene, the guy tumbled out of bed, clutching his groin and howling. Kate was absent, presumably in the bathroom. We needed to erase any evidence. Returning to the room, I quickly located the detonator for the device and added it to the rope. Finding nothing else, I concluded everything else had been destroyed. I approached the bathroom cautiously. Kate was on her knees, vomiting into the toilet. I had no desire to assist her. I just didn't care anymore. En route to the door, I spotted something on the floor and picked up a warm, soft piece resembling a tongue tip. In the first floor toilet, I disposed of it. They wouldn't be able to reattach it. Trying not to make a sound, I sped down the street, thankful once again for our distance from neighboring houses. Halfway to the garage, I emptied my pockets into a roadside trash can. 10 minutes later, I was back in my small work garage. I called Pete and Mike, my dirty, oil-stained employees and friends. They rushed to me, sensing my alarm. I asked them to vouch for me for the last 45 minutes, and they agreed almost simultaneously, saying, "Of course, boss." Before they could agree too quickly, I cautioned them that what I did was very serious, and once I explained, they might not be so hasty to answer. I expressed uncertainty about the charges I might face, acknowledging that it could lead to jail time. Before providing an explanation, I put on my old overalls and rubbed an oily rag on my face and hands, preparing for the impending police arrival, which I expected. The guys looked at me, somewhat stunned, as I briefly recounted recent events. Mike was the first to break, attempting to hold on for 15 seconds before bursting into laughter. This set off Pete, and soon we were all hooting uncontrollably. It took a full 5 minutes before we regained composure, and with handshakes and promises of support, they returned to their oily workspaces. Over the next hour, spontaneous laughter echoed from various dingy rooms. My wife Kate was about to face the consequences she deserved for avoiding my humble friends. That evening, I cleaned up the master bedroom, washing the bathroom floor. I decided to discard the bedding and mentally noted to buy a new rug. Torn curtains also needed removal. Trying to stay busy to avoid thoughts, the constant phone calls and knocking on the door didn't help. Yes, the media was in a frenzy. The mix of infidelity and a man losing his manhood was a story made for them. I only opened the door once and quickly turned off the phone. Finally, with no distractions, I began to reflect. Did I regret what I did? Strangely, no. I despised cheaters and had seen many become unrecognizable when catching their partners. Oddly, even before lunch, I was confident my wife shared this passion. I was shocked to be so wrong. Moreover, Kate's motivation astonished me. She appeared as devoted to me as I was to her, and our bed life had been fantastic. Well, until recently. After hours of inner turmoil, I could only find one clue. I can still recall the uneasy feeling I had 2 months ago when Kate said she was retiring to enjoy her last days of freedom. I thought she'd work until at least the 7th month of pregnancy. Something about her wanting one last celebration before having kids seemed strange. My personal cell phone interrupted my thoughts. Not many people knew this number. Caller ID showed Kate's parents' number. They lived about 3 hours away in the same state. I answered since I always got along well with them. After fewer pleasantries than usual, her mother got to the point. She asked me if I knew why journalists were besieging their house, mentioning that they would have to find out someday. She couldn't bring herself to go into detail. She then inquired if I had watched the local news that evening, maybe the main news, mentioning a story about a cheater who bit off her lover's dignity. I always liked her mom's colorful language and her views on life, but it didn't make our conversation easy. "Yes, Mom, look, there's no easy way to say this, so I'll get straight to it. The woman's name is Kate." Luckily, my confusion was interrupted by a scream, followed by a beep. When I pressed the end call button on my phone, I noticed a warning on the screen. This reminded me that I wrote down the end of my marriage just 8 hours ago. I had vague memories of leaving my phone recording outside my bedroom door. I knew that if I never knew or believed the reason why Kate did what she did, I would never be able to trust any woman again. There was a good chance that I would die a lonely misogynist, doomed to a life of uselessness. With desperate hope, I started playing the video. I already knew what it was showing. The pain was too fresh to relive the scene. I opened my eyes just as I put the phone on the floor. Without a visual representation, just a view of the hall ceiling, I had to imagine Mr. and Mrs. Infidelity lying side by side on the bed. I couldn't hear the sound clearly, so I downloaded the file to my computer and ran it through an amplifier. This is an important part of their conversation. Kate, it was fantastic. The past week has been great, actually. Does this really have to end today? My offer still stands. Just give me your word, and I will divorce Sarah and marry you. Well, yes, it looks like it will work. A great start to a marriage with a guy who left his wife and kids. No, and I love Dave too much to hurt him like that. In addition, he is a great husband and will be a good father. After today, I will be Mrs. Goody-Goody, a housewife at least until the youngest of our children start school. You can't love him that much. It's not him lying here next to you. No, you're mistaken. I love him very much. The moment I met him, I knew he was my only soulmate. I will never meet another. I am happy that I have such a good man who spoils me and will nurse me when I get a big belly from his 2 or 3 babies. No, I want nothing more than to die in his arms, surrounded by our grandchildren. Well, that was a great speech. But it begs the obvious question. Why are you with me now? At least Kate had the humanity to think about it. There was silence for a good half a minute. I guess she just missed the past. She didn't get married until she was 31 and was a bit of a wild girl. She missed just walking into a bar and getting attention from all kinds of guys. The thrill of leading a guy forward and then impulsively deciding whether he gets what he wants or not. Lately, Dave has been deer hunting with his buddies every other weekend. 3 weekends ago, she decided to take a trip down memory lane and check out a bar. This resulted in one night that was okay, but unsatisfying. Then last Saturday, she happened to walk into the bar I was at. And here we are. God, she's so cold. Kate, just consider this the last hooray. Anyway, what is she complaining about? Come here. I turned off the sound. At least now I knew that I was a good lover and husband. The problem wasn't me. The following days passed in complete disappointment. 2 days later, the reporters demobilized and left my quiet street. The hospital administrator called me and said that Kate would like some pajamas. I missed this one. She will have to put up with these humiliating hospital gowns. 2 days later, her father called me. He apologized for his daughter's behavior and expressed hope that I would keep in touch with him to try to sweeten the deal. He reminded me that he has another daughter and she was recently divorced. Sorry, Dad. It's just too weird. 4 days after this event, he was shown on the news again. Mr. Not-So-Big-Deal has been released from the hospital. Journalists dug up something and exposed him as a serial cheater. So it was with some pleasure that they announced that, although the surgeons had succeeded in sewing his manhood back together, it was very unlikely that it would achieve any of its intended functions. At the end of that week, I received an unexpected visitor. Mrs. Barton, or Sarah, as she insisted I call her, was a pretty lady with sad eyes. She told me that she had heard rumors that I might have some evidence that could help her in her divorce case. I explained that maybe it was true, but I couldn't admit it without exposing myself. She understood everything and was very apologetic for asking. I told her that I thought there was such an abundance of circumstantial evidence that she wouldn't need what I had. If this turns out to be wrong, I will persuade her to return and perhaps change her mind. There was such sadness in her that I felt sorry for her. Pulling out the video file, I played her only in the aftermath of the big explosion. The shock of her husband's screams made her cower at first, but she soon pulled herself together. Suffice it to say that she was not very sad when she left. Being the helpful guy that I am, I invited her to come pick me up when the sadness returned. Oh yeah, that wasn't the last time I saw Sarah Barton. The last visitor I received was probably the strangest. On Saturday, I answered the door to the detective I had spoken to at the house. On the day of the big event, the suit disappeared, leaving only jeans and a shirt. "Hey, son." "No, I won't come in. I just wanted to say that if there was insufficient evidence, I recommended that the case be closed." Hearing my gratitude, he turned to leave but stopped and looked back. "Listen, at the end of the year, I will retire. If I come back after this, will you tell me how you did it?" I just smiled and wished him a good day. Kate's letter arrived the following Tuesday. "My dear Dave, I can't express how ashamed and sorry I am that I did this to you. I understand perfectly why you couldn't bring yourself to visit me, and I forgive you, unconditionally. I never thought about the full extent of the possible consequences of my actions. I, of course, did not imagine that my parents would actually disown me. I know that I have lost your love, trust, and respect forever, which hurts me more than I can describe. I will understand if you never want to talk to me again, but it may help your recovery if you allow me to explain why I did what I did. Just be sure that it's all my fault. Doctors say that I won't be able to speak normally for a long time, if at all. They think I swallowed the tip of my tongue when I bit it off. They tell me about some experimental stretching technique that can restore some function. I hope this works, and I can at least get back to my career as a distraction from the dull, loveless, childless future I'm currently facing. Ask anything you want in a divorce, and I will sign it. If you could find it in your heart to keep me on your health insurance for the near future, I would be forever grateful. Farewell, my love. I wish you nothing but happiness in the future. I hope I haven't completely ruined your life. Your Kate, aka your cheating wife." The letter touched me so much that I immediately reversed my previous decision and sent her pajamas to the hospital. Now where are Mick and Pete's phone numbers? Do I owe them a beer, a keg,